Since the Industrial Revolution, the pH of the ocean has decreased by a level of 0.1 pH. This relates to approximately a 30% decrease. Based on the current level of expanding industrialization, the pH of the ocean is predicted to continue to gradually decrease by a rate of 150% by the end of the century. The ocean will not have experienced a pH level that low for 20 million years. So, what is ocean acidification? It is defined as the reduction of pH levels, the reduction of concentration of carbonate ions, and also a lowering amount of calcium carbonate minerals that results as several different chemical reactions caused by the absorption of carbon dioxide into the ocean. Ocean acidification is a somewhat recent global issue. Because of this, scientists do not know exactly how it will affect the marine food web.
I'm an expert, and I'm here to talk about ocean acidification. And what I was just demonstrating was carbon being absorbed by water to act as carbon sinks. And therefore, ocean acidification is mainly caused by two main factors, and that is deforestation and fossil fuel consumption. So fossil fuel consumption as a cause of ocean acidification means that fossil fuels such as coal, gas, oil, as they're used and consumed mainly by anthropogenic reasons and causes, they're absorbed by oceans since they act as carbon sinks. And fossil fuels are in planes, cars, factories, industries, many activities we use create fossil fuels, and that explains how ocean acidification is a recent trend and problem because the rate at which our fossil fuels are being consumed is only increasing. A little fact is that over half of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has been absorbed by oceans already. The next major cause of ocean acidification is deforestation. And forests also act as carbon sinks. So as humans cut down forests, remove trees, and therefore oceans have to make up for it in the amount of carbon they absorb. Deforestation also increases runoff. Increased runoff means more nutrients being added to the oceans, and this, added with ocean acidification, creates many different negative causes to many different ecosystems within oceans.
Dr. Ocean here, speaking about kelp forests and phytoplankton and how they're affected by ocean acidification. Now, they are both bases for a complex food web, and kelp forests and phytoplankton are key for all life in those food webs. But there can be adverse effects to kelp forests and phytoplankton with ocean acidification. The phytoplankton, that is so micro you can't see it, has an increased level of calcification, which can reduce the fitness of the phytoplankton. There is also an increase in photosynthesis levels, which will result in an incorrect ratio of carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus, leading to a reduced nutritional value of that phytoplankton. And nitrogen fixation levels will increase, resulting in possible eutrophication. But more research needs to be done on this topic. Now, when CO2 is increased and nutrient pollution is increased in kelp forest, there is an increase in growth in filamentous algae species and a decrease in growth in the calcifying macroalgae that is the undergrowth of many kelp forests. It is a tragedy. Now what happens is these kelp forests are colonized by all of the filamentous algae species, and it turns into filamentous turf mats, which is pretty much wet wool. Not fun at all.
Hi, I'm scuba diver Nemo, and I'm here to talk to you about coral reefs and how ocean acidification is affecting them. So the big thing with corals and a lot of different species in the ocean is how they grow is through the production of calcium carbonate. Now, the increased CO2 levels of the acidification actually decrease the carbonate ions in the ocean, leading to a reduction in the ability of these organisms to produce calcium carbonate, which in turn leads to smaller skeletal structures, which can lead to mortality and different things like that. So you start to have these go away. So you have less coral now. The other thing that ocean acidification can cause is it lowers reproduction rates. Now, this is a little different because with the rise in CO2, it's obviously has a rise in temperature along with it, which can help the coral. So at times you may see them balance each other out, but over time you will see that the essentially rise in CO2 and acidification will win, and you lose more coral. So you're down to a pretty small reef right now. Now, the problem is that as these corals disappear, you start to see effects further up the food chain and in different ecosystems. For example, there are lots of different fish that live in corals, and about 10% of those fish actually rely specifically on the corals. So as the corals decrease, you got 10% of those fish gone. But the other thing is, about 75% of the fish that live in corals will see a reduction due to the reduction in corals. So you see these go away too. And the last thing that's known to happen is that corals will actually bleach, meaning that they get white, and essentially they will die. And again, leads to less coral reefs, and essentially you're losing a whole ecosystem to ocean acidification.
Hello, I'm Tyrus, and I am a surfer. Now, 71% of the Earth is covered in ocean. Small percentage of that ocean is around the coastline. The coastline of the ocean is particularly more vulnerable to ocean acidification. Not only does ocean acidification affect the coastlines, there's also pollution and things like runoff that are also going to affect the pH of the coastline of the ocean. So, what is the problem with a more acidic coastline? There is the ecosystem, of course. Mollusks, things like bivalves, even the coral reefs, they can all be affected by ocean acidification. Bivalves, with a growing amount of acid in the oceans, there is less calcium carbonate ions available to them for growing their shells. They'll have thinner shells, which is going to increase their likelihood of getting preyed upon, and they are less likely to grow towards maturity and therefore reproduce. So they're inhibited that way, and there's also evidence showing that more acidic oceans are going to be detrimental to the coral reefs. Now, without the coral reefs, they bring a lot of diversity to the coastal ecosystems, and without them, there will be a lot less diversity. And even though there is a lot of evidence showing that ocean acidification is detrimental to all these species on individual levels, there needs to be more research done onto the extent on how bad it is.
Ocean acidification can be controlled or reduced by removing CO2 from the atmosphere after it is emitted. Removing CO2 from the atmosphere can be done by increasing uptake by terrestrial and oceanic ecosystems. Increasing uptake by terrestrial ecosystems can be done through increasing trees. Oceanic uptake can also be increased by ocean fertilization. This is done by adding naturally occurring nutrients such as iron to the ocean that are limiting to phytoplankton to increase their growth, which also increases the uptake of CO2. Ocean fertilization would only be beneficial in the short term because it could potentially be harmful in that it can cause an increase in pH in the deep ocean as waters containing the sequestered CO2 move down into deeper layers. Management effects on ecosystems can also be done just so that the ecosystems can deal with acidification by selectively breeding tolerant strains of organisms to produce more resilient ecosystems. Promoting diversity of ecosystems also increases the resilience to acidification, and this can be done through protecting marine areas. The main way to stop or slow ocean acidification is through cutting carbon emissions. Even if carbon emissions were to completely stop today, the ocean would still continue to absorb the excess CO2 until it was again in equilibrium with the atmosphere.